What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So today I'm going to be talking about Godzilla x Kong, The Secret of the Ooze, or whatever the hell is the name of the rest of the title. I don't know, I forgot. But I watched this movie last night. I was planning to review it that night, but by the time I got out, it was like 11:30 or something, and I was talking to my cousin Blair for a very long time. By the time after it was all said and done, it was just too late for me to record a review. I was feeling groggy and was just not feeling up for it. But now, after running some errands, I feel like I'm definitely ready to talk about this movie. So that being said, let me just talk about my familiarity with Adam Wingard as a filmmaker. Adam Wingard is somebody that I'm kind of like an apologist for, because I know a lot of people at this point don't really praise. They don't really praise Wingard, as a filmmaker or anything. I don't praise him or anything, but I just think he's a pretty good filmmaker overall. Like, I was there from the beginning. Like, I was there when VHS was first released, and I loved like his little thriller horror short that he released there. It wasn't amazing, but it was like a decently suspenseful like horror short. And then he came out with his indie horror flick You're Next, which I feel like I am, at this point, I don't know, I feel like I'm one of the few people that say that is a legit great and fun indie horror flick. I just have so much fun with that movie. I had so much fun with it then. I still have so much fun with it now. Then he came out with The Guest, starring Dan Stevens, who was actually also in Godzilla x Kong, which is awesome. But I really like The Guest too, and I watched it like not even more than a year ago, and I still really enjoy The Guest for what it is. Like, it's just an entertaining thriller, suspense slash horror Halloween flick. It's just a fun and effectively entertaining movie. And Adam Wingard loves to use this 80s throwback retro wave kind of score. Definitely inspired by someone like Nicholas Winding Refn, who I like Adam Wingard, but Refn to me is a much superior filmmaker. But anyway, then he went on to make films like Blair Witch, like the kind of like a Blair Witch reboot kind of thing, which I'm not like the biggest fan of, but I remember overall liking it. Now, it's been a very long time, so don't hold that too much against me, but I do remember enjoying that film overall. I remember the third act being really intense and effective. Then he came out with Death Note, which was dog shit. And then, and then he was in talks to make a remake for I Saw the Devil, which was, everybody hated that idea. Everybody fucking loathed that idea. I don't know. I think it got canceled. I think the whole idea of that production got canceled at this point. Hopefully that's true, because I don't want to see that movie. But then he came out with Godzilla versus Kong, which is the movie that I enjoyed quite a bit. Like, I enjoyed that movie. I watched that movie with Perry, and we both really enjoyed it. It was just a fun popcorn flick, and overall it was just, when you hear a movie called Godzilla vs. Kong, it gave you kind of exactly what you wanted. And then comes Godzilla x Kong, which I guess translates to Godzilla and Kong working together as a team. And then there's a part of you that thinks, okay, maybe this is going too far into just dumb fun territory that I can't enjoy it. But after watching this movie, I gotta say, this movie was super entertaining. Like, I think Adam Wingard knew exactly what this film should be, and he did it to pretty much the best of his ability. Like, it's just a dumb, fun, and even in some parts, creatively compelling movie. Like, yeah, it's dumb fun and everything, and I'll go into that. But even from a filmmaking standpoint, it's admirable. There's some, so when it comes to, so I guess I'll start off by saying, it's kind of a cliche thing by saying in this modern Godzilla movie, the human character stories are awful. No one cares about that. It's just really about, the Godzilla action and monster action type stuff. And yeah, obviously, in this movie, the action choreography and the monster fighting and King Kong and the Godzilla action stuff is obviously like what makes this movie fun and awesome. But you know, the human character stuff really isn't all that bad. Like, there's charisma there. Dan Stevens, as I also mentioned, is in this movie, and his character has some charisma. Like, I definitely didn't want him to die in this movie, so in some way I kind of felt stakes. You care enough about these characters to hope that nothing bad happens to them. And I think that's really important. Now, I might be alone on that. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people that watch this movie and are like, oh no, these fucking characters suck. I don't give a shit about any of them. If they died, I wouldn't care. But I don't know. To me, I don't necessarily feel that way. I think that, again, like, I care enough about them to not want them to die. I'll just say that. And I don't know. I just feel like this movie knows, in terms of pace, this movie knows how to flow, because it doesn't, I feel like it never spends too much time on the human character stuff. Like, maybe in the first act, it kind of has to spend time, you know, establishing plot and establishing conflict, establishing, you know, characters and character themes and character conflicts and all that. So yeah, you know, you could argue maybe there's a little bit too much time here and there, but I just feel like you have to do that for a film like this. And then pretty much like the second half of this movie and beyond, I just feel like is like perfect pace. Like, it knows exactly how much time to focus on human character stuff, and then just the what people came to see the movie for, which is just monsters kicking each other's asses, and you know, just the whole like action spectacle of the movie, which is that's what people want to see this movie for. And I feel like it structures itself and paces itself in a way that people really aren't going to complain about. Like, I don't think anybody's gonna come out of this movie saying like, oh, I wish it paid less attention to the human characters, it paid more attention to the monster stuff, because there's a lot of monster action in this movie. And I feel like that's why so far the Adam Wingard Godzilla movies have succeeded so well, is because he knows how much time to allot when it comes to human character story and monster action, batshit insanity bullshit that we all want to see, right? Like, that's, so far I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with how he is structuring these films. And this movie goes all out, man. Like, this movie is balls to the wall insanity. I mean, the audacity of this movie in a lot of ways was kind of mind-blowing, because when I watched the trailer, I was like, whatever this seems, yeah, it could be dumb fun, but is it really going to be that entertaining? Honestly, there's a lot withheld from the trailer that it just straight up like doesn't show you in the actual movie. And I think that's awesome, because it left a lot of surprises, in my opinion. I mean, you know, if you didn't read up on the movie, then obviously you're going to be like, maybe surprised. But if you like went out of your way to read up on what's included in this movie, maybe you won't be surprised. But as terms of watching a trailer and then watching this movie, it offered a lot different than what I kind of expected. I mean, yes, I expected this movie to have Godzilla and King Kong work together as a team. That's the title of the movie. But there's a lot of incorporations of different monsters in the Godzilla lore, in the King Kong lore, that I didn't expect to be incorporated into this narrative. And not only is it incorporated into the narrative, but it's incorporated into the action sequences and into the action set pieces in a way that I feel like does not hold back. It does not hold back. I mean, this movie goes all the way with its insanity. Like, there's a zero gravity, all-out monster fighting action sequence. Like, it's like Inception meets fucking Godzilla and King Kong insanity. Like, it's just, this movie didn't have to do that. Didn't have to do that at all. Like, it could have just been, you know, whatever. It didn't have to do that. It could have just been normal fighting, whatever, right? But it goes out of its way to have a zero gravity monster fighting action sequence that was just so much fun to watch. Like, and it was a surprise to see Adam Wingard or the producers, whoever idea it was, to go as far as it did with the monster fighting stuff. And then, again, it incorporates characters from the lore. Like, if you're someone like me who necessarily isn't, super in to the Godzilla lore, like, I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to Godzilla lore and information and the history of Godzilla and all the characters that have been a part of the series. I don't really know any of that. I haven't seen that many Godzilla films, in comparison to your average Godzilla fan. But it does incorporate, like, a lot of different monster characters into this movie. And it makes good use of them. Like, to me, it makes good use of them. The Scar King is in this movie, which I'm sure is part of the King Kong lore. And I can see some people having, like, problems with it or whatever, but overall, like, I love the setup because there is this entire part of the movie that is dedicated to King Kong alone. Like, no human characters involved or anything like that. It's just King Kong. It's just following King Kong alone into his own little journey and discovery of what is happening in Hollow Earth, right? So, by nature, that means you're not going to have any dialogue. So, this whole dedicated section of the movie, which feels like at least half an hour or more, is dedicated to a zero dialogue narrative, which, as an art house film lover like myself, is going to be compelling. Like, it's really, honestly, I think the King Kong story elements that have zero dialogue are the more compelling moments of this movie. And I think that's really impressive. It really is. Just to see, like, again, the way King Kong goes down this rabbit hole and discovering for himself what's actually part of his environment, all these new characters that are causing conflict in his life, and it gives his character and his storyline such humanity. And I don't know, it just adds so much interesting layers to the narrative that I thought was awesome. And again, zero dialogue, so it was telling this entire story with no dialogue, and I think that was fucking awesome. And I could see Godzilla fans having problems with it because they're like, oh, this is like King Kong's movie. They should advertise this more as a King Kong movie than a Godzilla movie. Which I guess is fair because this does seem more like a King Kong movie than a Godzilla movie overall. But it doesn't shy away from giving Godzilla, like, its day in the sun. Like, there's plenty of on-screen time for Godzilla as well. So, I don't know, man. Like, it was a blast. Like, I'm honestly surprised. Like, yeah, I liked Godzilla versus Kong. But this is just, I think I might actually like this one a little bit better because it's like, yes, Godzilla versus Kong it's a pretty insane movie and it's dumb fun, but I feel like Godzilla x Kong kind of ups the ante. It amplifies the spectacle and the dumb fun element of Godzilla in a way that I just thought was really fun and satisfying. And I think a lot of people are going to be satisfied with. I haven't looked at any of the reviews for this movie at all, but I can only guess that people are going to walk away from this film just admitting that they had a great time with it. Like, it's just, like, hard to not walk away from this film feeling like, well, I got my money's worth. I went to go see a Godzilla and Kong movie teaming up together, and I got what I wanted, and it's built up well, and there's a lot of good qualities about it, and it's just an overall entertaining time. And I mean, you gotta like, it's just funny because, like, you have Adam Weingart's Godzilla versus Kong, Godzilla versus, Godzilla and King Kong going at it, butting heads, fighting, and then he's like, what's the next move? What's the next idea we're gonna have? Instead of Godzilla and King Kong bashing heads together, have them together. So it's just kind of funny because it does feel like a natural next step, but I don't know. I don't know if it was a next step that a lot of people necessarily saw coming. And when it comes to, like, the cinematography and the direction, it's weird because, like, when it comes again to the human character stuff and the dialogue and pretty much anything involving the human characters, it's very basic cinematography, right? Like, it's very basic, nothing special about it at all. It's just by the numbers. But when it comes to the action sequences, it's like a whole new like storage facility of creativity opens up for Adam Wingard. It's like all of a sudden everything is elevated. Not only the choreography and the CGI and the action, but just the way that the camera is directed throughout these action sequences. It's just so much more creative, and you can tell there's so much more effort poured into the spectacle and action elements of this movie, you know, as opposed to the human character stuff, which again is not bad. It's good enough for what it is. Dan Stevens' character is charismatic. You know, everybody's fine in this movie. The comedic relief in this movie, I forgot the name of this gentleman. He's also in Beale Street and other really good movies. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's basically serving as like the comic relief. And honestly, his character is like, I feel like is half the time a weaker point, and then half the time it's not bad. Like, he's kind of a hit or miss kind of character. And I feel like it's mostly because the director or the script or whoever was behind this was really making him feel pressure to be funny every single scene. There's so many scenes in this movie where, like, I just wanted somebody to reach out to him and say, it's okay, you don't have to be funny, you don't have to be the funny guy, you can reel it in and you can just be a normal human. Because I just feel like every moment in this movie he feels like he is obligated to do something funny or do something humorous, and I just kind of felt bad for him in that way. But I don't know, in terms of human characters, it's really the main weak point. Again, like, the human characters aren't anything to write home about. They're not like the most substantive characters in the world. They're not the most thematic characters in the world. But they do their job in the sense that, again, you don't really want to see them die, which I think is important. And it doesn't spend too much time trying to develop so much about them either. Like Dan Stevens' character, we didn't see him at all in the last movie, but in this movie, it's just like, oh, here he is. It establishes his character in less than 5 minutes, and then he's thrown in the plot. He's thrown in the conflict. And I like that it didn't feel obligated to spend so much time with the human characters. But still feeling like, you know, you care about them in some way. And yeah, like, I don't know, I feel like I've talked about this movie for a long time now, but, I don't know, it's just a movie that, I feel like delivers kind of exactly what you would want out of a Godzilla and Kong movie, and even more so, because it's just the audacity of the movie. Again, it reaches levels of just like, I don't want to say sheer stupidity, because I feel like it's doing it like a disservice, but in ways it felt like very ridiculous and over the top, but you couldn't help but just enjoy it. You really just couldn't help but be on board with it, and it's just a good time. Like, it really is. Like, again, for those who follow my channel, y'all know this isn't necessarily my cup of tea of a movie. It's not like, you know, it's not the movie that I'll hail as like, you know, the greatest movie ever or anything, but it is a great time. It is a great time. You know, the main, I guess the biggest criticism I can say is that, you know, this movie doesn't necessarily take any bold choices. There is one bold choice involving King Kong's little like mini Kong, and the way, by the way, the way that this film incorporates King Kong's like mini, you know, ape Kong friend into the narrative, I thought was great. Again, it's part of that whole King Kong dialogue-less narrative that I think worked really well. I thought that was awesome. But like, the mini Kong's father is a character in this movie, and the way that they treated his character, I felt for him. Like, there's a decision made about the mini Kong's father, and I was like, damn, I felt for his, I barely knew his character. I knew his character for like 2 minutes, and yet I felt so much emotion for him. So, you know, you got to give it props for stuff like that. You really do. But in terms of like criticism, it doesn't, like, besides that one bold move with that character, it doesn't take much bold choices. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of just, there's not much risk in terms of, you know, character deaths. It just kind of plays it safe for the most part. There is one risk, as I mentioned, but for the most part, it's a very safe movie in terms of narrative and character. And also the dialogue, there's like this huge like exposition dump at some point in the movie, pretty much nearing the third act, that I was like, oh, it's kind of, I mean, I guess they built it up fine, but it definitely gets overbearing where I'm like, okay, that is so much information at once. It feels a little lazy to just dump everything at once like this. And even throughout the film, we have problems with like whatever characters, like, you know, spoon feeding the audience in certain ways. I'm just like, all right. But I don't know, it didn't bother me nearly as much as it does like in other movies, because obviously that's not the focal point. But anyway, I talked too much about this movie. Let me just stop. 20 minutes about Godzilla on my own. That's fucking crazy. But I'll just say Godzilla x Kong was a really fun time. So I'm going to give this movie a solid 7 out of 10. A solid to strong 7 out of 10, honestly. It was a fun time. I can see myself watching this movie again. Now that I am an AMC A-lister, I might just go watch it again because I get to see it again for free, basically. So, but that's about it. I hope everybody enjoyed this review. Enjoyed what I had to say about it. If you really enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.